Good morning, everyone. Good morning. The hour has come. We will make a start. Welcome to this meeting of Mid-Suffolk District Council Cabinet. I'm Councillor Andy Mellon, leader of Mid-Suffolk District Council. I'll be chairing this meeting. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use, that you do not interrupt other speakers. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. I'm just reminding myself to do that too. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you're told it is safe to do so. Finally, we will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app. So please can members make sure they are logged in and ready to use the app. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film or photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. So can I welcome everyone, cabinet members and officers for coming along this morning, and we'll move to the agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. There are no apologies received.
Item 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary, other registrable or non-registrable interests by members. And just to let you know, in accordance with delegated authority, the monitoring officer has granted dispensations to all members, and that includes twin hatters and company directors, in respect of the 24-25 budget papers. Are there any other declarations of interest? No? We'll move on to item 3. This is paper MCA/23/41 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of January 2024. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? And I just note that somehow Councillor Whitehead was left off the list of attendees, and we've amended that. Thank you, John. Any other points regarding the accuracy of the minutes?
It's not about the accuracy, and this may not be the right time, but did we agree about having minutes and actions from cabinet meetings and having a separate actions section?
Oh, you've got me there.
Or can I put it the other way? Can we do that going forward?
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. We do actually have an action out of the Cabinet meeting which member can access via the Teams link.
That's a bit embarrassing for you to tell me that.
Which is updated every time after the Cabinet meeting. So okay. We do have an action sheet and we do have the minutes.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that, but that doesn't come through the formal papers at all?
No, it doesn't come through the formal papers.
Good, we cleared that up then. We have an action sheet, and it is accessible, though not in the public domain. So can I have a proposer for the minutes, please? Councillor Eburn, and a seconder? Councillor Weller. And I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Sorry, Councillor Weller.
My laptop's just restarted itself, so I'm affirmative on that one. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you. So the minutes are agreed, and I will sign them at the end of the meeting. So we move on to item 4. This is to receive notifications of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received.
Item 5, questions by councillors.
None received.
Item 6, matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or Joint Audit and Standards Committees.
There are no matters referred, Chair.
Thank you. And then item 7 is the forthcoming decisions list, which is there. Are there any comments on the forthcoming decisions list? No. Okay, thank you. So we move on to the substantive items for the meeting. Item 8 is paper MCA/23/42, the General Fund Budget 24-25 and the 4-year outlook. We have various officers here to support this item. Karen Watling, who's the Deputy Section 15 Officer and Interim Corporate Manager, I think is joining us on the hybrid link. And we have Alistair Greer and Mike Hurst. No? We have Alistair Greer here. Yeah, great, okay. So I'll now invite the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources to introduce the report. Councillor Eber.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm pleased to present the General Fund Budget for 24-25 and the 4-year outlook. Firstly, I'd like to start by thanking officers for all their work on this. It's a huge amount of work that's gone into this, and not just producing the figures that you see, but really thinking about and interrogating the processes behind these figures, checking back into the finance modelling, the expert advice provided, and the alignment across all services. We as a Cabinet have spent a lot of time going through the finances, uncovering a variety of issues, many a result of the lack of challenge in the past, and yet we've still brought our opposition colleagues in to discuss matters around the budget. However, there's still more work to be done. We need to revisit the long-term financial strategy, noting that this report only includes an outlook. And again, this is something that we'll involve opposition group leaders in, as it's important for the Council, and we believe in working through consensus. But today, we have in front of us the proposed budget for the coming financial year, and this Green administration wishes to provide quality services to residents and businesses, invest in the district for the future while exercising good financial management. In the long term, this means ensuring the finances are secure despite a really significant drop in government funding over the years, while investing in the district so that our communities are thriving and more resilient socially, environmentally and economically. We are not looking at cutting costs for the sake of it, nor investing in areas beyond our remit, nor running the council like a corporation, but working with businesses and communities as an important and valued local government organisation. This budget is about doing something, about taking responsibility, about spending taxpayers' money wisely. It's about working with our communities to achieve a really great place to live and work. So this proposed budget for 24-25 takes into account the rising costs affected by inflation and interest rates, increased council tax receipts due to an increased population, recent increases in business rates, and reductions in government funding. And I also note that we've had some last-minute changes, of which there are some tabled papers. And on top of this, as we didn't receive some government figures until late Monday, there are new amounts for Rural Services Delivery Grant and Funding Guarantee, which is a total of £120,000 of income on top of the revised information in the tabled papers. So in order to ensure that we have robust financial management and can deliver high-quality services over the next decade, we are recommending increasing council tax by 2%. Mid-Suffolk's portion of a household's council tax is about 8 to 9%, and over the next few years, to keep income in line with rising costs, it's necessary to factor in this small council tax rise. We have seen in other councils in Suffolk what happens over time when this is not done, unpalatable cuts to important services. We also know that central government is planning changes at some point to business rates, and this has the potential to seriously impact our funding. We need to plan for the next decade with a robust financial strategy. And with this longer-term view, we're investing in our communities with a capital programme that will meet the Green administration's priorities, ensuring environmental and social responsibilities are at the heart of everything that we do. We will have a capital programme that invests in new foot and cycling paths, housing for those most in need, in ensuring everyone has access to a green space, in land for biodiversity and in our vibrant town centres. We've already put some of this into practice with a home insulation scheme, grants for community bus services, greater consultation with communities, support with flooding, and plans for improved biodiversity. We want to work with our communities, with our local businesses, with everyone at the council to provide quality services in this thriving landscape that Mid Suffolk deserves. And with that, Chair, I'd like to move the recommendations on page 15 of the papers. That's recommendations 3.1 to 3.4, and I'd ask for a seconder. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Eburn. I'm happy to second from the Chair, and I'll just make a few comments now. I'm happy to second these budget proposals, and can I say I'm extremely grateful to Councillor Eburn. I think we all are, for the work she's put in the preparation of the budget. Also to the officers involved in the process. I'm aware it's been a hard slog, and there is still more to do, some refinements and extra information needed before the budget comes to full council on the 22nd. Any budget is in some ways a best guess, looking a year or more ahead. We can do as much planning and forecasting as possible so that we have allowed for various eventualities, but we can't foresee the future. And it seems to me that the year ahead contains a number of uncertainties which could very well affect the council's finances. Now, whilst our general fund is currently in a healthy position, and I acknowledge we inherited a favourable finances from the previous administration, that could change with one stroke of a minister's pen. So we do need to be prudent and think further ahead when the financial picture may not be so rosy. I made a quick list of potential changes which could impact the council's finances. We know we're going to have a general election sometime in the next few months, and that could result in change in government policy. A business rates baseline reset would have a significant impact on us, as would a fair funding review. A change in government policy on free ports could impact us. And then we have an uncertain global economic situation. There's war in Ukraine, conflict in the Middle East, and one of the world's busiest trade routes under attack. If things got worse there, it could have a negative impact on the global economy to which we're all connected. And lastly, we're already starting to see the impact of changes in the accounting rules around minimum revenue provision. So in this context, the proposal to raise council tax by 2% seems a reasonable one. We have the opportunity to raise it by 2.99%. Inflation is currently at 4%. So anything below that is in fact a real terms decrease. The costs of providing our services have increased substantially, and a 2% rise is therefore a reasonable compromise. It's a small increase which could avoid the need to raise by higher amounts in subsequent years. We will still be receiving roughly 9p in every pound of council tax paid, and using that to provide a wide range of services to residents. This is very good value, and I'm therefore happy to second the budget proposals. Now, is there any questions from Cabinet members on the budget paper? Councillor Winch.
The additional paper has got the amount, the MRP amount related to Suffolk as 538. Can I ask two questions? One is, what is the total amount of the deferred loan that the 538 relates to? And the second question, it came up at a meeting the other day, and I realise it's my understanding, but with the MRP, I probably shouldn't ask it at this meeting, but do we actually pay that to the government? What happens to it? How does that actually function?
Councillor Eburn.
I was going to ask Alistair, I'm not sure if you can answer the question about the CIFCO first point.
Yes, hello. Bear with me. I'm relatively new to the council, so still very much getting up to speed. I believe that the Mid-Suffolk portion of the loan to CIFCO, I believe... actually, I'm not sorry. I'm not confident about that figure. Can I get back to you on that?
Alistair, sorry, I'll ask if Emily, the Director for Assets Investments, can help, because on the CIFCO point.
Thank you. So the deferred amount of loan or loan deferments for Mid Suffolk is around about £400,000. The ECL calculation is a bit more technical. It doesn't just look at the amount of the deferrals, it looks at a number of other factors and looks at probability. So the 537,000 is the sum that Arling Close have calculated as the
My
ECL.
question really was, why is it more than the total amount that's deferred? It's a bit confusing.
Yeah, and that is because the ECL is a technical calculation that looks at a number of different scenarios. It's not a direct relationship with the amount of deferred debt to be repaid. But we can take you through the calculation, but probably not in this meeting.
Risk, right, as a layman.
Shall I answer the second part of the question, Councillor?
Yep. Yes, please.
Yeah. No, the MRP doesn't go back to central government. What it does is it's a charge to the revenue budget, so a charge to our council taxpayers. And then what happens to that charge? It credits the amount of indebtedness we actually hold as a council. So in that way, it's sort of reducing the amount of debt we hold, and that's the way it works. So it goes back into the council, but in order to reduce the amount of debt we hold, if that makes sense.
Okay, has that answered your questions, Councillor Winch?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Any further questions from Cabinet members? No? Okay, so any questions from other members present? Councillor Scarf first.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 24 refers to the reduction of 232,000 in the interest income budget received by the Council from its lending to Suffolk Limited and was shown in the January 24 Overview and Scrutiny Committee report. This reduction has been reversed in the figures, including in this report, following the completion of budget forecasting work by Suffolk Limited and their advisors. Can I ask, what has changed between January 24, when it came to overview and scrutiny, and now? Perhaps you could give us a little bit more clarity on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Scarf. I'll ask Emily Otek if she can provide the detailed answer to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So SIFCO have been undertaking some detailed cash flow work with our advisors, and that piece of work has been completed over the last few weeks, which has been forecasting forward the income that we're expected to receive from SIFCO over the next financial year, with continuing improved debt collection levels and income growth within the portfolio. SIFCO is now projecting that they will be in a position to make full debt repayments in the next financial year.
Councillor Scarf.
A sort of subsidiary question to that then. My understanding was SIFCO was going to be quite ambitious in its targets with EPC ratings and getting them all up to a C or even B. Does this have any effect on the portfolio's ability to maintain that drive for improved EPC ratings or not?
So SIFCO continues to have an ambitious programme in terms of improving the sustainability of its portfolio. Looking at the capital expenditure required for the next financial year, it's not as great as it has been in previous years. That's largely due to the lease expiries that are coming in next year, lowering the capital expenditure needed for refurbishments during that year. We still have a programme to deliver EPC improvements, but continue to work with our tenants, and actually are finding that a number of our improvements are being tenant-led. So with the support of the landlord, a lot of them are actually being funded by the tenants. So no, there isn't any impact in 24-25 in terms of our EPC programme from making full debt repayments.
Councillor Whitehead, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Most of my questions on numbers have been answered by the finance team at our opposition briefing, so I thank them for that. But on the new tabled papers, on page 3, and I'm going to refer to the sort of wording there, so it's probably useful if people can sort of see it in front of them to make it more clear. So that's page... Yeah, I'm sorry, page 3 of the table papers. Oh, okay. Okay, right. Page 3 of the tabled papers. I've got a question relates to sections 4 and 5. And I asked the question because not only does this come before councillors, but the general public can read this, so I think it's important it's understandable. So section 4 says, what's proposed, Mid-Suffolk, an increase in council tax of 2%, and then section 5 says why, and the answer is to be able to produce a balanced budget. I mean, given that the surplus is over 5 million and council tax increase only accounts for 140,000 of that, I mean, does Councillor Eadman feel that is a true and fair statement to make in there for the general public to read? That's my first question. The second question, it goes on and says, if we freeze council tax increases, then even where a surplus exists, the gap between income and expenditure will only become wider. Well, where a surplus exists, a gap between income and expenditure becomes wider is actually an increased surplus. So that's actually a nonsense statement there. So if that wording could be changed before it goes to full council. My third question is just in section 4, why the need to even show Baber's information when no other councils are shown. So that's my 3 questions then on that.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Yes, we do need to produce a balanced budget, and the surplus is being used for investments within the district, so it's not being used for core services.
So you're happy with that wording?
We'll revisit the wording, but to double check, but that is the case. Thank you.
And then, sorry, and then one technical question on page 9, and it's actually following up from what Councillor Winch asked. Paragraph 311 refers to a voluntary MRP payment at year end. Perhaps the finance team could advise whether that is a payment or just a provision, because again, I think the wording needs to be accurate.
I think that, thank you, Councillor Whitehead, for your question. That's referring to the payment into the budget, as it were, kind of thing. That's the, the budget needs to make the payment. So
it's not a cash payment as such, although it might read as such. It's provision. It's an accounting entry rather than a payment.
Yeah, just to comment on the previous question on page 3, it appears to me that paper refers to both councils, so it's trying to capture 2 sort of quite widely differing situations, and perhaps is a little bit struggling to do that. So I think you're right, it does need a little bit of revision just to sort of make that clear. Yeah.
Chair, if I may, maybe we, when the budget papers go to the council, we'll do one that's specifically just for Babers. They can do theirs, and we'll do one specifically for ours, because then it'll make it clearer.
Any further questions? Clearly, we'll have the opportunity to debate this in full council when it comes in a couple of weeks' time. But in terms of the Cabinet, we have an opportunity to debate this item now. Who would like to make a contribution to the debate? Councillor Winch, thank you.
Okay, just to reiterate the thanks that's already been given. Thank you very much for the officers and to Rachel for getting us to this position. I've written 3 things down on my bit of paper in front of me. The first thing I probably shouldn't say, but we're a new council. I'm new to council processes. I find the budget process a bit bewildering. We've already talked about how late in the year it happens, and I know there's plans to have a look at that. I also find it strange that we operate a budget process that's a little bit independent from the business planning process. And I think we've all felt frustrations around this, and I think that next year we'll get that a fair bit tighter. On this issue of council tax and charges, when you've got a large surplus, this is always a tricky debate. But I think we've got this about right, and that is, as a new Green administration, we want to make a big impact. We plan to spend some of our reserves and have an impact on the district, but we need to leave the council finances in a state that are good for the long term. So we need to be thinking 5, 10 years ahead, not just 1 or 2 years. So I think putting council tax up not by the maximum but by 2% is sensible, and starting to bring some of our charges more into line with the cost base is also sensible. I think finally, what is this budget about? The really good news for Mid-Suffolk is that our general fund is in a very good state, and that gives us a really strong basis for moving forward on a lot of the priorities that we have. And I think that's our message to the residents. It's up to us to get on and deliver the priorities and live up to the mandate that we were given.
Thank you, Councillor Winch. Anyone else? Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to, again, thank the officers for all their time and diligence in going through this, and actually I'd like to personally thank the portfolio holder for her diligence, and all of the opposition councillors for looking into the vast amount of detail and screeds of forms and figures and tables we've had to look at. On the issue of why would you raise council tax a small amount while you have a budget surplus, that the easy way would be to take that budget surplus and just suggest that we can carry on and not raise taxes or even cut taxes. Of course, the problem you then get is the problem a certain other council has that sits in this particular chamber, where it has tried to do that over the years, and now this year they are having to raise taxes as much as they possibly can while having huge cuts to some of their services. So I think this council would seek to avoid that at all turns. And to achieve that, what you really need to get to is a very, very sensible, balanced, year-on-year position where this council's finances can wash its face each year, which is why we've taken some of those steps to make sure that each of the areas of service that we carry out is covering its cost. And sometimes that means we have to charge those service users a little bit more for that. But I think if we can get this council onto that kind of footing, that means that when we do get surpluses, we need to get that money out there working on those other projects that then moves this council on and truly achieves the huge success that we think the people of Mid-Suffolk can achieve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other contributions? Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to kind of finish off really by saying that one of the things that we need to look at in the future, as in the very near future, is the medium-term financial strategy and a long-term financial strategy. And we're starting having those discussions now, and I kind of want to reiterate the point that I'd like to ensure that the opposition group leaders are involved in those discussions, because I think it's really, really important that we all have a kind of complete wide view of the long-term future, particularly potentially with issues such as government withdrawing or completely changing rather how business rates is calculated, and this council therefore losing a lot of the business rates income. And on that note, I'd say as well that one of the reasons for the surplus in this current budget is that we had set aside, as we're required to do, an amount for business rate appeals, and the time frame for accessing that has ended. And so of that, we've had 2.4 million that we'd set aside that we thought we may need to use for appeals, and that has gone now back into the budget. So what we'd be looking at now as an administration is getting that funding back out there to serve our communities and businesses, and really ensure we can make an impact with it. But I'd hope that everybody can support this budget today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So if no further debate, I will read out the recommendations and then we'll move to the vote. So the The recommendations are 3.1, that the general fund budget proposals for 2024/25 and four-year outlook set out in the report, comprising the revenue and capital estimates as well as the proposed movements and reserves, be endorsed for recommendation to Council on 22nd of February 2024. That 3.2, that currently the general fund budget for 2024/25 presented in this report assumes a 2% increase in the Band D council tax, and that this is endorsed for recommendation to Council. 3.3, that as at the time of writing this report, 3 budget items are not yet final estimates, namely financing costs, paragraph 5.12, costs arising from likely regulatory changes in accounting for learning impairments, paragraph 5.14, and final grant income figures from central government, paragraph 5.19. Officers will aim to table final estimates to Council, I assume that means, at its meeting for endorsement. Is that correct? It says Cabinet, but I think it probably means Council, yeah. 3.4, that the new income bands and contribution rates for the 24/25 100% local council tax reduction working age scheme, as set out in paragraph 5.29, be endorsed for recommendation to Council. And then from the table papers, we endorse the recommendation to Council, the creation of an expected credit loss reserve of £538,000, as explained in paragraphs 3.4 to 3.11, to be funded by using some of the 2024/25 forecast surplus in the revenue budget for this purpose. So those are the recommendations, and I will now ask the Governor's Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. That's 6 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you. We move on to item 9. This is paper MCA/23/43, the Housing Revenue Account HRA 24/25 budget. And we still have Karen Watling, the Deputy Section 151 Officer and Interim Corporate Manager, Finance, Commissioning and Procurement online. Jenny Smithies, who's the Finance Business Partner for HRA Revenue, is here. And I will now invite the Cabinet Member for Finance Resources to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm pleased to present the Housing Revenue Account Budget 24/25. And again, I'd like to start by thanking officers for their work on this. It's a huge amount of work has been done, and a real interrogation of these finances has taken place. This has uncovered a variety of issues, some easily solvable and some not so, and certainly not the financially robust position we were led to believe we were inheriting. The Housing Revenue Account, or HRA, is a ring-fenced account from which all aspects of council housing are managed and financed. And alongside this, a 30-year business plan, as required, is being produced together with a full survey of the council's property, and this will provide a basis for future decisions. It's vital to us as a Green administration that we carefully manage this account, as this is our responsibility to our more than 3,300 tenants. We want to ensure that they have safe, secure, environmentally efficient homes, and while the council owns these properties, every single property is someone's home. In order to ensure that we have the funds for the upkeep of these homes, we're proposing rents are increased in line with government recommendations. We are acutely aware of the increases in the cost of living and how many people are struggling day to day, but with the increase in housing-related benefits, we hope that the majority of our tenants will not be out of pocket. However, if we don't do this, some of our services will be at risk. We also have in place and plans to boost initiatives to help those vulnerable tenants in need, and with much central government help being cut, we will be doing our bit as local government to provide our residents with the support that they deserve. We must ensure that we can afford to keep our tenants' homes well maintained. During the current financial year, we have effectively had to pay for 2 years of housing repairs in one, as well as deal with a multitude of compliance issues. However, I'm pleased to say that despite an extremely tight budget, we will have the ability to improve the environmental efficiency of many of these homes, subject to getting match funding. And this will ensure homes are easier to heat and therefore save on bills too. We also want to continue to invest in housing for residents of Mid-Suffolk. We have an ambitious programme of acquisition and new builds within the limits of the constrained finances, and we must deliver low-carbon homes that are secure and low maintenance. We must ensure our tenants have the best homes that we can provide and that we continue to invest in these, meeting their needs and the district's. So with that, Chair, I'd like to propose the recommendations on page 48 of the papers. That's recommendations 4.1 to 4.5, and I look for a seconder. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eburn. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Winch.
Yeah, I'm very happy to second this. I think the clarity of the report I'm really pleased with, and its transparency I'm really pleased with. The numbers I don't like at all. So I think whoever is responsible for the HRA is extremely difficult because it is basically a dysfunctional system. So the council tenants have to pay for the repairs and maintenance of their properties, fair enough. But they also have to pay for the decarbonisation of the properties, new build of council houses in the district, servicing a debt which is now 24% of the total income, and they also have to, within that, cater for the impact of the right to buy scheme. That is a completely bonkers system. We have inherited a bit of a mess here, I would say. We've got a poor service with relatively limited funds to go forward. That doesn't mean that there aren't things we can do, and I would say there are 3 major things going on at the moment. The biggest is the Housing Transformation Project, which is looking in detail at our repairs and maintenance, trying to make us a lot more efficient and give a much better service to our council tenants. We're also doing everything we can do to get in grant funding. So we've currently applied for the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. So any grant funding that's available, we need to try and latch onto. And we will be doing a detailed review of all the capital items that are in the HRA at the moment, just to make sure they all pay their way. I think going forward, I am a little bit nervous. Maybe I'm not allowed to say this in a public forum, but I would like to see us having, and now I know we've got an action log, I'd like to see these on the action log. I would like a much better advanced warning or approval process of anything that's going to go outside these parameters, because I now think we've hit the point where we can't go outside those numbers because we're starting to eat too far into our reserves. And I'm not entirely satisfied that we've got that in place at the moment. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councillor Winch. Do we have any questions from Cabinet members on this report? If not, any questions from other councillors? Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the recommendations, obviously, is the increase in Chelwood housing service charges. So my questions sort of cover that area. Does the proposed increase now cover the true cost over the range of sheltered homes that we have for the service charges, finally, because we always know historically it hasn't, and this is obviously an attempt to equalise the situation. And supplementary to that, you mentioned the government's decarbonisation fund. Are we going to, as a council, do everything we can to mitigate those service charge increases for those sheltered housing scheme residents, i.e. Solar panels, etc., whatever we can do to decarbonise the stock, which we would be doing to other stock in our general housing stock, because I feel there's a moral duty that we now ought to look to the sheltered housing schemes to do everything we can to help those residents in the future to mitigate any massive increases in service charges. Thank you.
I think, thank you for that, Councillor Scarf. I think for the sheltered housing schemes, we're kind of getting there in terms of costs. I think one of the areas that we need to look at over in the next, what we are planning to be looking at, as it were, is the sheltered schemes, full stop, and how they're sort of arranged and funded and so on. So that's the sort of piece of work that's kind of ongoing, as it were. But it is, and as you know, it always has been an issue in terms of meeting kind of the full cost of that scheme. So that is something we're looking at. With regards, I'll let Councillor Winch comment on that as well, but with regards to the improving sort of the environmental efficiency of homes, you'll see that in the capital budget there's a 1.8 million amount in there, and that's the amount that we would hope to get a match funding from government on in order to do that. And I think we then want to be doing what we can to look for other sources, as it were, to improve that for tenants. Councillor Winch, do you want to come?
Well, yeah, other than I'm not going to directly answer, I think it's a good question. I believe that we fully recover the costs now, but we don't. No, not yet.
Sorry, not yet. It's an ongoing project at the moment. These are the costs that we know are relating to the sheltered accommodation, but we are currently looking at the costs which are not necessarily coded to sheltered accommodation, but relate to sheltered accommodation to make sure that they are captured for the future.
Okay. And the other thing is to reiterate what Councillor Eben said. There's a general review going on of sheltered, which will bring into issues that you've raised about, do we need solar panels, etc.
Any further questions, Councillor Scarf? No. Councillor Whitehead, no questions from you? Okay, so we can move to debate on this item. Anyone like to contribute to the debate? Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Housing revenue accounts. Absolute. If we were designing a way of funding council housing, I don't think in our wildest dreams would come up with a system like we've got at the moment, because it doesn't seem to help those that are trying to deliver it or those that are in receipt of it. And actually, I think even those within government now are spotting that. I mean, I don't normally look for radical ideas on a website called Conservative Home, but a councillor from Suffolk called Colin Noble has just written a piece about HRAs on Conservative Home, basically laying out that you have to get local authorities into a financial sustainable position within HRAs if we are going to even deliver our commercial housing targets. So there is even now a recognition among those that perhaps wouldn't be as sympathetic to social housing as you might think they would be politically, are now recognising that we have to address the systemic issues of the housing revenue account. How does that help us with setting it right now? It doesn't help a great deal to think there might be changes in the system later, because we have to set the budget for this year. And because of the constraints of the mechanisms, the only way we can make this account more financially sustainable is to either carry out less work on our stock, which is unsustainable in all sorts of ways, or to raise the amount of money coming into that account. And the only way of raising that amount of money into that account is to affect the rents, which we equally wouldn't want to do. But we have to put this budget into a financial sustainable position, or at least attempt to, while we await government changes and plead with them to make those changes that will make that job all the easier. So I would also call, I will vote for this, but obviously with a heavy heart, because it is not a position I would certainly want us to be in, but equally say all speed to anyone of any political persuasion that's asking the government to change and reform housing revenue accounts for local for housing providers, because it needs to be changed. If not, we are going to end up in a cycle of where tenants are going to be expected to pay more and more each coming year, purely just to keep our head above water. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. Any further contributions to the debate? Councillor Eben.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on this report, excuse me. The you know, we mentioned at the beginning the amount of work that the finance team have done on this, which is incredible, but also the housing team themselves and all the people involved in that. There's a lot of projects going on, a lot of work looking at how the system can become much more efficient, but also while providing those really, you know, good quality council homes that are, you know, can be easily heated, as it were, rather than not, and that have got a safe and secure for people to live in and call their home. So we do need to be, you know, it is like Councillor Stringer said, with a heavy heart in terms of saying to recommend to increase rents, but we have to put the money in to make sure those homes become sustainable for the long-term future. And it's not something that I would, you know, want to be doing, but you know, until government changes the rules, unfortunately, we have no option at this point in time. So we look forward to kind of, you know, working to try to improve the situation here in making our homes the best they can be for our tenants, and hopefully those people that and also those people that might need our help and assistance, we will have measures in place to support them in that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eva. I'll just make a couple of comments from the Chair then before we move to the recommendations and the vote. So clearly this is quite a sobering report to read. We are between a rock and a hard place in terms of the sustainability, the financial sustainability of the HRA account. We would not want to be increasing council house rents to this extent, but we are in a position of needing to, as my colleagues have set out. And clearly, two things would be very helpful. One is any opportunity members or officers have to lobby government to change the rules so that we could do better with this situation would be good. And the other thing is, as Councillor Stringer said, you know, some radical ideas to change how we do things with this account. We are, I think, open to any suggestions in order to move things forward in a more sustainable direction. But now I will read out the recommendations and we will move to the vote. So the recommendation is 4.1, that the HRA budget proposals for 2024/25 set out in the report be endorsed for recommendation to Council on 22nd of February 2024. 4.2, that an increase of 7.7% for council house rents, equivalent to an average rent increase of £7.33 a week for social rent, and an RPI of plus 0.5%, that's 9.4% in total increase, for an affordable rent of £10.65 a week be implemented. 4.3, that the RPI increase of 8.9% in garage rents, equivalent to an average rent increase of £3.84 a month, be implemented. 4.4, that an increase of 18% for sheltered housing service charges, equivalent to £27.19 a month, be implemented. And 4.5, that an increase of 44% for sheltered housing utility charges, equivalent to £29.63 a month, be implemented. I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. That's 6 votes for. That's carried, Chair.
Thank you. That concludes the business of the meeting. Clearly, we'll be revisiting these issues again in a couple of weeks' time at the full council meeting. Just to remind you that the next meeting, the date has changed. It's been moved to Monday, the 4th of March at 9:30 a.m. It will be here in the chamber, and it's been moved because of the chamber availability. But apart from that, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you for coming.